Hey everyone, do you know what happens when you get on the GW Parkway? What's at the end of it? Well, if you consider the beginning of it, where 495 is at the Maryland and Virginia border, and then you follow that all the way south, guess what you find at the end? It's the GW Parkway. You find GW. You actually find George Washington's house in Mount Vernon, and you really actually could find him if you want because his tomb is there as well. So let's talk about location today. We are talking about something totally different than we did on the City of Alexandria. We are in a completely different location. Most of Alexandria and Fairfax County is on the south side of 495, with some parts of it being inside the Beltway, which stretch along the western edge of the City of Alexandria. You go as far north as Bailey's Crossroads when you're inside the Beltway, and then you've got the Potomac River that borders it on the east, and the southern boundary is really at Fort Belvoir. And then right in the middle you have a huge park, Huntley Meadows Park. We're going to talk about that in a second. So I'm Melissa Terzis, DC Real Estate Mama, and on this channel we talk about all things living in DC and the surrounding suburbs. So if that's your thing, you can subscribe or click like or comment, and then you'll be notified when you subscribe of new videos coming. All right, so let's talk history. The oldest original developments in all of Fairfax County were actually along the Potomac River. So part of Fairfax County was ceded into the capital to be part of the capital city. And it was Alexandria County, District of Columbia is what they called it. But for a whole host of reasons that we've covered in other videos, Alexandria actually retroceded back out because they didn't want to be part of the capital city. They felt like they weren't very fairly represented. Anyway, when it retroceded back, the part that was essentially part of the capital city became the City of Alexandria, and then the rest was Alexandria Fairfax County. It makes us trip over our words when we talk about this, when people say, I want to move to Alexandria, because it's such a huge expanse of an area and different neighborhoods. So we often have to clarify, are you talking about the city? And a lot of times people say the city, they're thinking Old Town, or are you talking about out in the county, which is a little bit more suburban. So everything in Alexandria has an Alexandria mailing address, but there's a totally separate government in the Fairfax County portion than there is for the City of Alexandria. So did you know that nobody moves to Fairfax County part of Alexandria because they want to sell their car and walk everywhere? The roads are large and wide. The traffic is tough at times. And make no mistake about it, you are in the suburbs. You're not in the city anymore. So it's like the reverse of Toto. Like, Toto, we're actually back in Kansas, kind of. So individual neighborhoods here have walkability, but I never would call this the city type of walkability. You'll see people walking their dogs and walking around, and there may or may not be sidewalks depending on what neighborhood you're in, but you're certainly not getting walkability like you would in a city or a more urban area where you're walking to restaurants and shops and doing a lot of things on foot. So you're not going to walk to eat dinner for the most part, but you're just going to walk around your neighborhood. And speaking of neighborhoods, I'm in one of them. I'm in Holland Hills, which I am partial to. I've been a mid-century freak for probably 25 years, maybe even longer, since I was a little kid, and I used to love these little mid-century houses. I thought they were so cute. Anyway, I'm standing in front of one now just so that you can get a little taste of it, but let's talk about the neighborhoods here. All right, so like we talked about, there's the northern arm of Alexandria that is inside the Beltway, Lincolnia Heights, Lincolnia, Bryn Mawr Park area. It's west of Landmark inside the Beltway. Then you've got neighborhoods on the western side of the Fairfax County portion of Alexandria. Franconia, which is a residential neighborhood with access to retail at both the Springfield Town Center, which is not in Alexandria, and also Manchester Lakes Shopping Center, which has a bunch of restaurants and an Amazon Fresh grocery store. So there's Windsor Estates and Kingstown. Kingstown's a planned community that was started in the 1980s. There's tons of retail. There are apartments, condos, townhouses, single-family homes. There's tons of retail there. The town center is actually just a huge mega shopping center with every store you could ever possibly want in your life. There's Winslow Hills and Wilton Woods. They're the northern part of Alexandria, just south of the Beltway, mostly residential single-family houses. There's Rose Hill and Virginia Hills. These were developed in the mid-century. They're kind of more unassuming mid-century homes, and there's some apartments near the shopping center for Rose Hill, which is at Telegraph Road and Rose Hill Drive. Rose Hill has a civic association and 2 pools in the neighborhood. And Greendale Golf Course is also here and it's just one of a few golf courses that's actually managed by Fairfax County Park Authority. So Groveton, Valley View, Woodley Hills, Hybla Valley, these are neighborhoods that are just off of Route 1 in the Route 1 corridor, and they're also home to Fairfax County's largest park, Huntley Meadows. So let's talk about the eastern side of Alexandria. Neighborhoods on the eastern side of Alexandria. We've got Huntington, that's where the end of the Yellow Line Metro is. There's tons of high-rises here, apartments, condos. That's really where most of the Huntington residents live, are in these large high-rise buildings. Jefferson Manor and Fairhaven, this is just where Route 1 crosses South Kings Highway. There's a lot of retail here. You've got Belhaven, Bellevue, and West Grove. Belhaven was so named for the settlers in the 1700s, and it passed through a few different families before the first home was built at 6041 Woodmont Road in 1928. Belhaven is basically along the Potomac. It's got its own shopping and retail area. Because of its location, it probably won't surprise you to know that it's low-lying, and during high rains that the area can flood, as does Old Town and several other areas in Alexandria. This neighborhood includes the community of New Alexandria, which has homes, condos, and a shopping center. Then there's Holland Hills, which is where I am, mid-century modern neighborhood designed by architect Charles Goodman, who also designed several other things in the DC area, notably National Airport, as well as a community, Hammond Woods, up in Silver Spring, Maryland. Then you've got Mount Vernon. That's where George Washington's house is. It's here at the end of the GW Parkway, but it's also used, Mount Vernon's also used to describe the unincorporated part of Alexandria. And the truth is, actually, all of this land used to belong to George and Martha. And then you have Fort Hunt and North Mount Vernon and Yacht Haven on the south side. These are residential communities, a lot of single-family homes, very close to the Potomac River, larger houses here and more expensive. But speaking of that, let's talk about real estate. So not only does Alexandria have a ton of neighborhoods, but it also has a lot of different kinds of houses and house types. Virginia doesn't really control growth and development the way that some other areas strictly maintain it. I'm looking at you, Maryland. And so your money goes a lot farther here. Alexandria has every residential house type that you could possibly imagine, and really every price point to go with it. So your money goes farther here, definitely, for sure. So you're gonna be able to find some super cute rambler houses on maybe 1/4 of an acre in the mid 500s. I know this sounds high, but the neighborhood has a huge span. In places like Rose Hill and Virginia Hills, the prices are gonna go into the 700s and 800s though, for larger houses in surrounding communities like Wilton Woods. And you're actually gonna see houses that go well into the millions in neighboring areas like Potomac, Belhaven, Fort Hunt, and Yacht Haven, and especially because a lot of those might have water view, which is key. Real estate is newer in the Kingstown area. Kingstown was developed like late 90s and 2000s, but you're kind of looking at 700,000s for townhouses and houses. The only high-rise condos are in Huntington and Belhaven. Everything else that's condo in the county is going to be essentially like a garden style or walk-up type of situation. So food, a little less fancy than the offerings in Alexandria City, which is inside the Beltway. Most everything is off of Route 1, which is also called Richmond Highway. There's the Haven, which is in Belhaven, pizza and beer. Next door, you've got the Custard Shack, which sells desserts. There's Tippy's Taco House in Huntington, Bob and Edith's Diner, which is a local favorite right next door to Tippy's, Mama's Kitchen, which has Greek and Italian food right off Route 1, and it's just south of Woodley Hills. There's El Paso for Tex-Mex, that's also on Route 1, and if you want real Mexican, authentic Mexican food, that's Tacos El Costilla in Hybla Valley. There's also Uncle C's Chicken and Waffles. Fun, Mrs. Donut. Nall's Produce for all the gardening needs, plus fresh produce that you can get from the local farms in the area. There's the Seaboil Crab House in Woodley Hills. There's Thai off of Route 1. There's all kinds of stuff. So you can find it all here. It's gonna come with like a dialed down version of the fancy though, and compared to what you'll find in Alexandria City. This is not like Alexandria City at all. They are two totally separate identities and feelings and personalities. All right, so what is there to do here for fun? Well, there's a lot of stuff. Huntley Meadows Park, This land, this is the biggest park in the county. This land sits on what was once a dairy farm, and it was supposed to become an airport, but those plans were abandoned and now it's Huntley Meadows Park. So there's trails there, you can do picnics, that's kind of like an outdoorsy thing that, you may want to go hiking or check out everything that's in there. Mount Vernon Trail is a 17-mile paved multi-use trail that stretches from the George Washington's Mount Vernon estate to Theodore Roosevelt Island. It connects with regional trails along the way. You've likely seen it if you've ever driven down the GW Parkway. The view is great when you're in Arlington and Alexandria, but as it gets further south, it actually gets more wooded when you get into the Alexandria Fairfax County portion. There's also recreation centers throughout Fairfax County. So neighborhood recreation centers like Waynewood, which is only open to people that live within a certain geographic boundary, they have a 4 to 5 year waiting list right now. Stratford Rec Center is also a neighborhood pool and tennis rec center with geographic limits in the North Mount Vernon area. Kingstown and Manchester Lakes also have neighborhood recreation centers. Don't feel left out though if you're not in these neighborhoods, because Fairfax County in total has 9 rec centers and 3 of them are in Alexandria. So there's the George Washington Rec Center in Woodley Hills, that's run by Fairfax County, as well as Mount Vernon Rec Center, which is in Bellhaven, Bellevue area. And then another one is in Groveton, which is very centrally located, that's Lee District Recreation Center. There's also a ton of parks. There's Muddy Hole Park, which is just south of Huntley Meadows. There's fields there for sports. There's tennis, there's a playground. There's Mount Vernon Woods, which has a playground. Lee District Park, which has trails, sports areas, and a playground. And Mount Vernon District Park. All right, so let's talk about kids. So Fairfax County has one of the best school systems in the country. Fairfax County allocates 52% of their budget to schools. Grade Schools is going to tell you that the schools here are a 4, 5, and a 6, but that doesn't always hold true for Alexandria because you have to dig in and read the actual reviews. So the individual schools have great reviews. The neighborhood schools have a sense of community with the name of the school is usually actually tied to the neighborhood you're in. So if you're ever confused, you can kind of look at the elementary school that your location feeds to and see what it's called. That's probably your neighborhood. Anyway, I can always say things about great schools and how they're really just a measure of test scores, and teachers that know how to teach so that kids get good scores on test scores, who are also oddly bonused and incentivized to do such. I could go on for hours. That is why you're going to have test scores that may or may not reflect what the school is really going to represent for you and your children, should you have them and they're going to go there. All right, and then finally, let's talk about the doggies, because we know I love my doggies. So there's parks all over for dogs. West Grove Dog Park in Bellevue area. There's Blackjack Dog Park in Groveton off Route 1. There's the Woodlawn Village Dog Park, and there's also Woodlawn Manor has the Gristmill Dog Park. So in addition to that, when you go into these neighborhoods, you're gonna see people who are, walking their dogs. They don't all feel like they've got to get to an actual dog park, but you've definitely got options here. So I hope this gave you a really good flavor of Alexandria, the Fairfax County portion, and that you understand more about what it's like to live here and to have fun here. So I am Melissa Terzis, DC Real Estate Mama. If you have any questions about Alexandria, Fairfax County versus the City of Alexandria or anything else real estate related, hit me up, let me know. My contact info is coming next.